Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. Some today's hits and hard-to-find favorites. Combine the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
Welcome to Richard Listens on Sports. If that new theme music doesn't get you excited, what does? Dr. Richard?
Seeing how excited Peter was when hearing the theme music.
Yes. And what did you think about the theme music, Richard?
I was shimmying in my seat.
It gets you hype, right?
It's original. It's pumped.
Yeah.
It's amped.
Yeah.
I'm amped.
And so you're watching and listening to Richard and Peter, and we're saving, well, I mean, if you've read the promos and stuff, it's no surprise, but we're saving a surprise for one more moment. So, in-studio surprises, lots of surprises today. I just surprised Richard with this new theme song that he had no idea about, and or where it came from. So, I will say it wasn't our mutual friend, Mr. Johnson, but it still surfaced for us, and when I heard it, I was just like, man, that's so hype, I like it, you know? Get your hype, right?
I love it. I love when things surface.
Yeah. And so we start the show on a high hype note. So it's coming to the end of 2017, and that could be a good thing because that means 2018 is a new year. And how exciting is that? So thank you for being with us this entire year on Richard Listens on Sports. If you're watching us at facebook.com, Richard Listens, don't forget to write your questions, leave a comment. As you saw in our promos, the show today is the story of us. Story of Richard, the story of Peter, the story of Caitlin. Well, we still haven't let you know what the surprise is, but I think you know. And we'll introduce it in a second. So if you have questions about us, our lives, or what we're about, or what kind of is Dr. Richard Haynes or Fruit of the Loom? I don't know. You know, if you want to know that, make sure to ask us right there on the Facebook Live. I already see, my old childhood friend Sean Miller's there representing Carpentersville. And we've got Matthew Peugeot, your friend from Florida. Hello from Pensacola, he says.
Hello, Matt.
So keep checking in. If I don't mention your name, it's just because I don't see all the names all the time. So, Dr. Richard. It's a special day. We said it's a story of us. We're going to be talking about ourselves. We're going to be sharing our stories and what's motivated us in life and on all of that. And, hey, it's been 3 weeks since we had a show, technically. And we have another show next week. We usually go every other Monday. But we're doing 2 consecutive after missing 3 weeks. So how you doing, Dr. Richard?
I'm doing great. I'm amped up. I'm excited to share your news. But
yeah,
I can't let the cat out of the bag just yet.
Yeah, totally. And of course, when we're in your segment, you got some photos. You just had a great little excursion, right?
Well, I did another 5K yesterday.
5K, there you go.
It seems small. But I was sick all last week. I think nothing compared to what people who were really close to the fires here in Southern California went through. But was strangely, I don't have any allergies. I knew I've been having trouble breathing most of last week, so I was proud of myself to get up there and try it. Proud to get out there with people in the community, really positive people who helped me run Special Maccabees and do other healthy things in the community to do something positive together. Was really nice. I found it as an opportunity. First was the challenge just to see if I could make it. Do I listen to my body, or do I, not take on this challenge? And then once I did, it occurred to me, I got a sense of what some of our friends go through who are actually run well. Get the sense of how they run in packs, and do you search to beat your personal record or the best in your age group kind of a thing, and So there's some competitive drive that comes out, and there's also, like, if you're running with community people running with strollers and things like that, it's a whole different vibe. It's not necessarily a race, it's more of a community run. So
Totally.
love getting back into that spirit again. It feels like it just like wakes me back up and brings me back to the moment.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Richard.
Thanks for asking.
And if you notice, there's one other different thing about this show. As we're phasing into 2018, we want to make things exciting and really mold the show into something special. Richard, you've said this before. I'll say it again. Hey, we're open to suggestions. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, all of that. We want to shape this show into something really special next year, so we got some new theme music. We also axed the applause. If you noticed, the show started with no applause. And I say that now because, and I thank our incredible engineer, Jarvis Exix. Thank you for making the music happen and making the applause not happen so sporadically. But Jarvis is amazing. He puts up all our graphics. He's always busy during the show coming up with graphics and keeping the show rolling and the sound good and the camera's good. So we appreciate you, Jarvis. Thank you. And I talk about the no applause because now I'll talk about the surprise in the studio. And I don't want the audience to be like, well, why would you start talking about Caitlin with no applause? Like, well, we had no applause. There's no more applause. So Caitlin, who does our Fitness Wellness Minute, as everyone knows, for a good part of this year, has always come to us via Zoom from various parts of the world. And be it the East Coast, be it Mexico, Wisconsin,
The Brooklyn Bridge, various airports.
But this week and also next week, we have the great pleasure. It's so hard to say this without applause, but no applause, Jarvis. We have the great pleasure of having Caitlin Patricia Weiler, our fitness wellness expert, in the studio with us. Welcome, Caitlin. Here she is.
Woo! I know it's weird without the clap.
We can add our own noises now. We don't need fake applause.
So happy to be here. It's real. I feel like it's great to be back in my old neighborhood and to really be here in person, in the flesh. So,
I know, it's crazy.
it is
Here
crazy.
she is.
That I would walk by the studio every day when I lived here before we even had this show. So
Wow, that must be cool.
it is taking me back in time.
So how does it feel to be here in the studio for the first time with us and not just via Zoom?
It feels natural, actually. I should be here every week, right?
Because you are a natural woman. And it's kind of a nice little respite for you after working the LA car show for 10 straight days.
Yes. So this is a good, I guess, closing to that show because we're starting the next chapter here.
Exactly. So, folks, as you saw in the promos, it's a story of us. We're each going to get 15 minutes on the clock, and we're going to kind of delve into each of us. And I know that you know a lot about all of us just from what we talk about on air, and we have shared stories of ourselves and all of that, but this is an opportunity to get a little bit more in depth and talk about things from our past, things that have motivated us, how we became who we are, where we're going, what you want from Christmas for Santa, if you celebrate Christmas, because there's Hanukkah as well. What's the equivalent to Santa and Hanukkah? Is there anything? Is there a man that brings gifts for Hanukkah, Richard?
There is no specific man. There's just oil, which manifests as a lot of potato latkes, pancakes, and jelly donuts.
So I wish you the best oil for Hanukkah.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Richard, let's welcome a couple other people. Jewel Hargrove is watching. Joseph Medina, our young intern for the Vids app, is watching. Welcome, Joseph. I am going to set my timer, Dr. Richard, on my phone here.
This is getting more and more intimidating.
15 minutes. The timer has begun.
It's like a game show.
So,
choose a topic and...
ladies and gentlemen, watching Richard Listens on Sports here, you know what our motto is. We talk about life and sports and the intersections in between, and this is very much the intersections in between. So, Dr. Richard Olberger, you were born back in the day, and one day you became a psychologist, and here you are. Okay, moving on. Caitlin.
Yeah.
So, I joke.
Caitlin's more interesting. We just got her in the studio. We should focus on her.
Well, no, like I purposely wanted to schedule her 15 minutes for last, kind of saving the best for last, because, I think our audience is kind of like, yeah, Peter, Richard, we've been there, done that, but
Exactly.
we really want to hear about Caitlin. So it's kind of like my way to keep people engaged until Caitlin
And can I
comes on.
interject? Because, like how we all walked in here today, I'm always, it's always a production with me. So let's save the big production for the end, right?
There you go. What could that be? Stay tuned and find out. You won't find out what the big production is unless you're listening.
Peter, you're such a tease,
in
always.
20, 25 minutes. Okay, so in all seriousness, Richard Olberger, just tell us a little bit, like, your childhood.
Do I have to pay my copay first, or
Yeah.
this is?
No, I mean, nothing wrong. Like, you've told me things and stuff like that, but just spend a minute, tell people, you were born and raised
as it
on Long
relates
Island.
to the show, or just general bio stuff?
Yeah, just you. Who's the child that became Dr. Richard Olberger?
Well, I'm a son of a teacher and a New York real estate man, and I was born on Thanksgiving Day, or so the legend is told this year. As of last year, the facts were slightly different, but on a cold, wintry day. And anyway, I always loved growing up in New York City. I think even as a baby, growing up next to Central Park, there's part of me that's Jarvis's graphics are cracking me up.
I love this one.
But yeah, that's me. I love New York.
Knickerbockers!
Yeah, raised right Central Park. I love everything New York, and so being out here now for long enough where I guess I have to call myself an Angelino. And I love LA. But New York, I think, my heart's out to them and whatever, the accident today on the New York City subway. Yeah. My heart is always there, and really grateful. Lived in the city till 3 years old, and then grew up in the suburbs, town called Rockville Center. So had the best of being able to live in the quiet, green, rich suburbs of New York and still be just a train's throw away from New York City. And so I think a lot of the most significant memories I have starting in sixth grade and stuff like that onward were from, taking the trains in the city, all the New York sports teams, getting to share those things, with my father and family. And that's where I started to get my real connection to professional sports and also backyard sports and high school and middle school sports. So that and the people I think that I've been connected to and the families that always had this rich sense of connection and love for the games.
And so, yeah, you've been with sports your whole life and a big sports fan.
Yeah, so it's both been in the culture and then also family members. Call him my uncle, but Uncle Bill, a close family friend of my father, was like an avid hiker, would take us into the mountains of Ramapo, New Jersey, and surrounding mountains. So I feel like I had this nice balance of nature therapy and sports loving to the point where we could climb a mountain and listen to the New York Giants game from a radio. That was like the old school approach of listening to the game on transistor radio, and still getting to do a little bit of both.
And as far as New York goes, you are Giants, Knicks, and Mets, right?
I'm Giants, Mets, Knicks, Rangers.
Okay.
So that confuses some people. There's an algorithm for that, actually, because I was raised in Long Island, but I have my dad is from New York City, so big Ranger fan, and thankfully got to experience a lot of those teams live at some point or another. Surprisingly, not a Jets fan, although I did have two significant childhood experiences involving the New York Jets. One being I went to summer camp at Hofstra University, where the New York Jets practice. So I literally used to walk by their summer practices.
Who were some of the stars of the team at that point? Was that
I think
Curtis Martin? Or?
No, this is Freeman McNeil, from UCLA
nice.
graduate, I believe. And Ken O'Brien was the quarterback, who gets often overlooked, but had some battles with Dan Marino back in the 80s. In fact, he, I think, owns the season series record versus Dan Marino.
Wow, that's really saying
often overlooked as the QBs that came from that famous class. So, but even better, Freeman McNeil, who was a star running back at the time, and I think it started at UCLA, was dating someone down the block. So I literally could walk down the block, and a friend of mine from growing up, Todd Unger, and I used to get to play catch with him and just stand out there like, just hanging with a professional football player with nobody watching.
Wow,
and to see his joy. It's just like, just getting to play with some kids. So that was awesome.
So Richard, how did this New York kid that loves sports, you played sports, you still competitively play basketball, how does that kid transition into psychologist? Like, what got you interested in, hey, you know what, there's something about this that I feel like I could help people, I like to listen to people?
Well, I love sports, and growing up in New York, and my mom having grown up a teacher working in Harlem, and I think it opened me up to, playing with every kid on the playground and always having a lot of diversity in my classes, that I always was interested in cultural experience and difference, and trying to understand what made people tick, and being sensitive to what their concerns might be or what might be triggering them. And having, grown from grandparents that were immigrants, being always sensitive to people who came in from other places and things of that nature. So there was always this innate curiosity and desire to get to know people. I was always drawn to that.
But how did you then equate that to, like, I'm going to become a psychologist?
It's hard to identify. I just always knew that I wanted to help people. And probably, having a mom who helped others was probably the biggest model to do so. I think just tend to have a family lineage of social workers and therapists. So it kind of feels like a calling in a way, plus having family from Vienna, Austria. Always felt like Freud was somewhere into the DNA. It was always a curiosity with psychology and philosophy books. And, kind of gave that answer maybe even before I knew who I wanted to be when I grew up. I remember speaking to a therapist who told me that, like, every day, like, that his therapist, his son was a therapist in Seattle and was still trying to figure out who he wanted to be when he grew up. So, I think that understanding that just because you get a PhD or an advanced degree does not necessarily mean you've figured it out. So I'm thankful that in recent years I've been shown other ways to fine-tune my approach, or ways which I really desire out of passion to work with people. So,
and this photo that Jarvis just put up with you holding certificates, that's you getting your somatic experiencing.
That's right. That's
certification.
Yes,
right?
Last January in Tucson. So I was able to complete a 3-year training in somatic experiencing. So, which is really interesting, because I had to have a PhD working on the county in crisis response and trauma, and I had some colleagues who kept kind of calling me out and saying, you should look into this, somatic experience thing. And I'd be like, that sounds wonderful, that sounds great, but I'm too busy, and I've read some things from some powerful, inspired people that say, if that's your excuse for anything, that I'm too busy, there's probably, you're probably not prioritizing your life enough. So thankfully, I had the fortune to shift courses 2 years ago and make a lot of space for a lot of rebirth and renewal and healthy patterns, and to take on this training in something that I truly feel will help not only me. I had to start with me as a clinician, me as a person, and then take that and use that to then help the people I work with in a what I found is a more empowered way, a more in tune way.
Amazing. And once again, if you're watching us on Facebook.com, Richard Listens. AJ Collier, our good friend, is watching us back from Carpentersville. Melissa Galvin, hello. Another Carpentersville friend of mine. Seagull really represents. But if you have any questions, Matthew Peugeot did say, didn't you say that your mom was once a guidance counselor?
This is true, Matthew. She definitely was for many years. So maybe she was guidance counseling me at the table, and I just feel I need to do it to other people now.
Now, Richard, I wanted to ask you a question, too. I loved what you said, too. And so do you think you had a defining moment, though, when you felt like you knew what path you wanted to take? Because I know you said you recently had time to kind of figure out and to find new ways to kind of fulfill what your passions are. And I think even with my own life, I've thought about that, how I've always kind of had the same goal, but over the years, it's developed and changed just slight little bits that have kind of put me more directly where, those passions are fulfilled. Do you feel the same? And do you remember what that defining moment was to kind of push you towards what you're doing currently?
Wow, the stumper.
What say you,
The
Richard?
stumper. Well, two initial responses came up. I mean, one is that I feel like there's these, it depends if you take the nature and nurture approach, right? Some of it may be what I was seeing in my environment from people around me. So it just may have been kind of natural, and others may be just innate characteristics, which the therapy realm allows you to, exude some caring, listening, storytelling, an inquisitive nature. It kind of supports that. So, but I would say that having the good fortune at kind of a challenge time during college that I got to study abroad, and I was happened to be in a small town in Israel called Beersheba, which was probably now is much more developed, but it had a lot of immigrants, and I got to work with an agency that worked with small children, and they had lost their parents either to drug violence or to war violence, and they were teaching me Hebrew. They can only communicate in their birth language, and I was trying desperately to teach them English and forage along. And to see the pure joy of them having someone, care for them or take an interest or invest in them. I think any of the work I've done with children maybe gave me the most kind of like purpose and feeling like this is definitely a direction that I need to pursue, and probably has led to me taking on, other things involving coaching and mentoring and things of that nature. There's so many, but if one that really like clearly being, across the globe and having to ask yourself, why am I here and what's the purpose? That would be one that stands out.
Amazing. And you're quite a young man too to have such big thoughts of helping people. A lot of people in their 20s wouldn't be thinking that way.
Yeah, thank you. That was at 19. But, some of it is...
19, excuse me.
But, some of it, look, the selfish nature doesn't go away. I don't think any path has been crystallized. Even now, the show has become a whole other way of reaching out to people. And I was just, reading about the history of psychology and psychologists themselves, learning about using media and the radio and different things historically that they could reach out to people and educate people, dating back to, like, Laura Schlesinger, I believe, Dr. Joy Brown, Dr. Ruth. So, different people used, psychology in that way. But, the whole form of figuring out new and bigger ways to reach people, I feel like there's still constant evolution going on. I realize I'm just probably an infant in some ways about learning capacities of healing. And the axiom goes, the more we know, the more ways we realize we don't know.
So, Richard, your 15 minutes are winding down soon. The alarm's going to go off, but a couple of quick questions. What's one of your favorite sports moments that you've witnessed in your life?
Game 7, 1986 World Series. I was present, Mets beating the Red Sox.
Wow.
That was phenomenal.
Boston girl doesn't like to hear that.
Sorry about that, but that was probably a big defining moment for me. And being present at, more painful moment being present Giant Stadium versus the Philadelphia Eagles when Randall Cunningham, I think he punted 99 yards in the snow or something like that. But freezing and losing in unity with my fellow New York, New Jersey brethren, also showed the lengths that you will go to for the love of your team.
Oh, there we go. But I am going to still wrap up a couple of questions real quick. Who are some people that inspire you, Dr. Richard?
Who are some people?
Yeah, who inspired you in your
me?
life or that inspire you now?
This could be free association. Well, there's so many. I draw inspiration from so many people. But, I have to start with my mom. I mean, hard worker, not ever willing to stop giving despite, I think she got beat up a couple times, going to work, pregnant after having kids, going to school with me, I believe, in the car seat. So I think always being connected to education. A few of my middle school teachers, Mr. Restaino, who used to run groups for kids, health teacher, freshman year basketball coach Bob Bigelow, who taught me about care and coaching, and I believe authored several books on sports and psychology before his recent passing. So there's several amazing people, as long as all the countless psychologists historically that have kind of trended and paved the way, and Peter Levine, who's the big founder of
Somatic Experiencing.
Yeah,
amazing.
And you're my role model.
Oh, you're mine too, Peter.
Gosh, dang.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here. I would not be doing this without you and everyone coming in. It's not cliche, and everyone who just keeps pouring in. Chris Johnson, other coaches who are giving back to youth and mentoring. It gives me excitement each week when I ask myself, what am I doing? How do I keep going? How do I keep tackling on more? Where do I grow? And I always get a sign. So thank you for being in my path, and for the people I've yet to meet who continue to inspire me.
And thank you, and that's a good segue into my segment. And first of all, I would like to say hello to Lori Story Hankey watching, good friend of mine, and an old friend from my Harper Community College days, Debbie Dunaway. And
Jules says you're her role model too.
There you go. Wow, now I'm getting red cheeks.
When are you going to share about this book that you just published that came out today? You just tried to put me first and just this can't get overlooked.
Right, okay,
So
well, I'm starting my timer, and I shaved some time off of my timer because I wanted to go a little extra long in you, Dr. Richard, because there was questions to be asked, but I shaved my time down because we definitely got to give Caitlin her 15 minutes. She's not getting 14. She's getting 15.
All right, so enough, Peter. Let's get into Peter here.
Thank you.
So we still have a lot of
small talk.
Yeah, thank you.
So
that's the feedback we're getting here, Peter.
To answer your question, Dr. Richard, thank you. Yes. So
now it's our turn to put you on the spot, right, Peter?
Yeah, and so I've got a book that came out today. So amongst my endeavors in life, I am a mouth painter. I don't have good dexterities in my fingers to hold a paintbrush properly and paint, so I hold it in my teeth, and that's the way I write. I use my stylus that way, and so I've kind of got this based on my cat Muffin. I started painting this cat character that's called Muffin, and I belong to an organization called the MFPA, the Mouth and Feet Painting Artists Association. And they're a publishing house, and they do a lot of Christmas cards. This is their big time year. Lots of Christmas cards, like I think Coca-Cola Christmas cards are sanctioned through MFPA. And they do a lot of calendars and stuff. And anyway, when they saw my cat character, they're like, hey, can you do this cat in Christmas settings and create a children's Christmas book? And I was like, hot dog. So I did 14 original paintings, and as you see on the screen there, you can see the front cover of the book and a couple of inside pages, and I wrote the story as well. It's kind of meant for, you to read to your young child, or, maybe a 5-year-old who's learning how to read might like to read. It's like, 2 sentences a page, and it's about Muffin's adventures in Christmas. And what I will say is, not to be like all commercial now and publicity, but the MFPA has printed a soft cover version of this book, and if you want it before Christmas, you got to order it before this Friday, December 15th. So they've given it a whole week to get it before Christmas. but they're kind of doing it as a test run this year. And if they sell enough copies this year, they'll publish a hardcover version next year, and they'll include it in their mailer that they send out to their hundreds of thousands of people around the world on their mailing list, like in October,
Wow.
like featured. So I'm hoping that we could sell enough.
So
of
everybody
this.
go buy one of these books.
Yeah, I think
Support.
they're like $10 with free shipping, and it's like 8.5 by 11, but it's small. It's 16 pages, so it's a quick, fun read, and it's original artwork by me.
That's a great holiday present. I'm glad we should have that up there for all our listeners.
Yeah, and now you can see the front of the cover and the back. I thought it was kind of me, I think I'm clever sometimes, I don't know, but the front cover is Muffin looking at you, and the back cover is Muffin not looking at you. Like the opposite view. I figured, I've never seen that in a book, kind of getting both perspectives there, so it's almost like 3D in the 2D world.
You are clever.
Oh, thank you.
So what else, Peter? What else are you working on? What's driving your passion currently? Because that book you said a couple of years ago, right?
This book here,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the paintings have been, probably 14 months work in progress, yeah. Each painting takes me probably 10 to 14 physical hours of painting.
Wow.
So when you get this book that has 14 paintings, that's, it's about 200 hours of work by me.
Wow.
I never looked at it that way. That's a lot.
You should feel very accomplished.
200 hours.
That's a
Imagine
lot.
the things you could do. So yes, and Caitlin, outside of that, if you ever go to my social media handles, I'm, Donut Spirit at Instagram, because I've got a lifelong passion for donuts, and in any of my bios you'll see I always list, donuts, Chicago Cubs, Muffin the Cat, Kabbalah, baseball. I love fantasy sports. It's actually a very exciting weekend. It's fantasy football playoffs have started this weekend, and I'm in 3 big money leagues, and 2 of them were in first place, so I had a bye this week. But in the third one, I was in 3rd place, and after yesterday, I am losing 102.8 to 98.4.
Wow.
And I have the Dolphins defense tonight against New England. Now, on one hand, that sounds like a little vaunted against New England, but the Dolphin defense is on fire. They've scored big points the last 3 weeks, and so all I need them to do is sack Tom Brady 3 times. He's not going to throw an interception, but if I could just I need 5 sacks, or I need a fumble recovery.
Wow.
If they could just get Rex Burkhead or Deion Lewis to fumble the ball and recover it.
Wow.
If I can get a touchdown on special teams.
And I love
fine.
seeing your passion for fantasy sports. This being my first year of being in 2 different leagues, so I see how much strategy it takes, and I see your passion and your GM-like skills that come out.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all 3 of these leagues I'm in, I'm very competitive, and although I will admit, last year I won 1 out of the 3, and I've had good success, but this is the first time I've ever been in the playoffs in all 3 like this, so it's it's exciting. I'm psyched.
It's game time.
Yes, so I'm excited about that. So we'll see, and in about 3 hours, I'll know if I advance in this league, which is actually my longest league. So I really want to advance. And so there's that stuff, and then as you all know, I'm partners in a new startup app called Vids, and we're a video co-creating app. And actually, we do a podcast over there. We've done 1 a week for 17 weeks. And we release it every Thursday. And this Thursday's podcast, we're actually going to finally divulge to the audience what our app will do. We've been very ambiguous about it, outside of co-create, share, that sort of thing. So, and we're excited about that, to finally kind of announce what it could do. And we're looking at I've been with this project since April. And I mean, it's my business now, and it consumes most of my time. And a shout out to my business partner, Ben Jamin. He's amazing, and we inspire each other. And I'll get to how Dr. Richard inspires me soon as well, and Caitlin. But we work really good together, and we're looking at a soft launch early in 2018. It's really unbelievable. I mean, Ben's from the music world, I'm from the film world, and so we're kind of learning as we go, but you just cannot believe what goes into developing a heavy video-based app. Like, the development is insane. And speaking of that, a shout out to our mutual friend, Sherwin Zadeh, who's our developer.
Happy birthday, Sherwin.
Yeah, and happy birthday, Sherwin. And Jake, who's working alongside Sherwin. But yeah, just the amount of time and effort and hours that goes into coding an app for videos, it's insane. So those are
AJ Collier also says you're his role model.
Oh, shucks. So, I'm
sure
five
so
people
many
role models out there.
Well, you're mine
like
too.
that.
I mean, I'm sure you have dozens and dozens and hundreds, Peter.
Yeah.
But we need to ask you a real serious question, you know?
Please.
Well, who inspires you? I know you want to talk about how Richard inspires you, but, or how do you, kind of same question as we asked Richard, what was there a defining moment to kind of, you feel that put you on your path to what your passion is? Or
Actually, that's a good question. I definitely had a very defining moment in my life that kind of, I'd always had it inside me that I wanted to, bring change to the world, or I wanted to, a lot of people, you get that feeling like you want to do something to impact the world. But when I was a teenager, I was very, very shy. Very, very shy. I came from Carpentersville. We got bused 10 miles away to Barrington High School, and it was like we were the poor kids, they were the rich kids, and, it's just like a John Hughes movie, it's like it was very divided. The first thing, after my first 2.5 years or halfway through my junior year, I finally kind of like came out of my shyness a little bit, but I would say that defining moment for me is that there was I actually decided to run for student council for my senior year of high school, and so it was the end of junior year, so I went up there and gave a speech to be the vice president of the student council senior year, and really half if not more of the school didn't even know who I was, and so I made up this whole story about how I just moved here from Wyoming and how great Wyoming was, but I just gave this like speech that was, has become my trademark style with absurd humor, and like, I was going up against this like very popular cheerleader girl who everyone just like, oh, she's got it in the bag. But I'm not even joking, like during my speech I got like I had to stop like 3 times for uproarious laughter and applause, and like as I was up there, like that moment I realized like, okay, like this is what I'm about. And walking away from that podium, like you could just see like, my opponent, she knew she lost.
And you probably put yourself way outside your comfort zone just to get up there, right?
Yes, exactly.
How old were you then?
I was 17.
Wow.
And yeah, I was so nervous walking up there, but then walking away from the podium, I was a whole new person. And like that's the Peter Sobey that is today.
That's amazing.
So yeah, like I'll never forget that moment, and then everything changed my senior year. Like all of a sudden everyone knew me, and I got to do the speech at my graduation, and yeah, all that, and then
That's amazing.
And then of course, obviously, another defining moment was after my freshman year in college. Then I dove into a shallow lake and broke my spinal cord and became paralyzed. But that's a whole other story. That obviously was a life changer too. That allowed me. Luckily, I had the perseverance and attitude to be strong with it, and I had a really strong mother figure and sister, and luckily I was able to, I think, turn that diversity into something where I feel it is like an obligation, not to sound egotistical, but like an obligation to inspire people. Like I don't want to be holed up in a room. I want to be out in the world and showing people, there we go, my time is up.
But it's amazing, Peter, and what I'm hearing is that, you discover these amazing strengths, your wittiness, your ability to captivate and inspire people. and then even through your accident, then further used those talents to inspire people. I mean, you already inspire people every day through the amount of stuff you do. I mean, to be, I'm amazed even when I hear you're running a company, you're painting, you're meeting with me, we're connecting with guests, we're talking with Caitlin about wellness tips. I mean, it's endless, and you still have time to manage 3 football teams. So, and you don't want to do anything without your full passion. And so that I think is a really key message for all our listeners, is just your commitment and your intensity, which you give everything that you connect to.
It's not only that too, you've faced your adversity, and it's like not even dimmed your light slightly. So when you went through that adversity of getting your spinal cord injury, Peter, did that change your passion at all, or do you feel it ignited a passion within you to like bring you to the next level, to be doing what you're currently doing today after that defining moment in your life?
Well, really quick, first of all, Jarvis just showed a picture of me with like a huge gray beard. That was from a few years ago.
Is that your Santa Claus?
You're lightning the moon.
It's like, my beard is like completely gray, and that's when I was actually growing.
Oh my gosh, it doesn't even look like you.
Do you dress up like that? We bring you donuts? Is that something we're supposed to do?
And I was actually like growing my hair out because I had a friend who's a cancer survivor, and she wears a wig, and she needed to repair the wig, and she's actually an ex-girlfriend. We're still very close, and I vowed to her one day that I would grow my hair and give it to her for a wig, and I did. So I gave her 22 inches of hair for her wig, and I grew my beard out too at the same time, just so I'd look all grizzly. But really quick, I'll answer your question very quickly, Caitlin, because then we're going to start your 15 minutes. What was the question again?
So because you faced that, major adversity, did that, change what your passion was, or did it ignite a new passion that maybe you didn't know you had, or how did that change your current?
So really, really, really quick, yes. It like after I kind of like it sunk into what my situation in life was, I literally had a conversation with myself. I said, Peter, don't look back in anger, don't look back in depression, don't look back and say what if. Just always look forward and make yourself that promise, and I did, and I still live my life that way, that I refuse to be angry about anything or to get depressed about it, or to why even spend 1 second wondering what if I did this or what if I did that. So it definitely kind of like propelled me in a whole new way of re-inspiring myself. Good question. Thank you, Caitlin. And now on to Caitlin Patricia Weiler.
Every time you say that, you want to hear the clapping. You want to clap, right? You have to adjust to this now. No clapping.
So,
now we'll just have the go-to Richard Woo's.
So, Caitlin.
Yes.
Here you are in the studio.
Here I am.
And we are so honored to have you on the show week after week and to know you. I'll start where we started with Dr. Richard a little bit. Like, you've got such a long and storied history between pageants and fitness and all of that stuff. As a child, what started shaping who you are today?
So I think just my upbringing and my family life and that education of becoming a caregiver at a young age. So try to make this long story as short as I can, but both my parents are the reason why I work so hard every day, and have always been my inspiration. My father was in a diving accident very similar to yours just years before I was born, and my mom, gave up her time in nursing school to become his full-time caregiver, and then my parents decided to have me, and I became a caregiver for my father, who was a quadriplegic at age 5, and I think just that lifestyle of always for one, growing up a lot quicker, becoming an adult at a young age and having a lot of responsibility and being extremely different from my peers. I was an only child who was taking care of a parent who really had no one to relate to in that aspect. And going through school, I remember being so bullied by the kids, whether it was, because my father was in a wheelchair, or, I wasn't pretty enough, or whatever it was, that it never seemed easy. Until this day, it still doesn't seem easy, but I think I'm grateful for those hard experiences, because I know they've shaped me to be who I am, and have helped me relate and to,
both of those things sound crazy too. That kids made fun of you because your father's in a wheelchair and you weren't pretty enough.
Oh, it's crazy. I remember being in the neighborhood and I would ride on his lap sometimes or on the back of the wheelchair, and kids would throw rocks at us. Or, kids would point in the mall. And even going out with friends now that have a spinal cord injury, I look sometimes how people react. So it's in 30 years of being very aware of, what and how a spinal cord injury affects one's life and a family. It's my mission to, make a change and provide more education so that people can, understand and accept. And I feel like we live in a world where we want to have, it's like a tunnel vision with some people that we judge a book by its cover. And I just wish that there would be more people out there that can kind of look at the soul in the person and not make that prejudgment. Because when it comes down to it, we all have a story. We've all had it rough. I mean, I don't think there's many people you can pull aside on the street and say, I don't have a story or everything was perfect in life. And those struggles or experiences, I think, that we all face. That's what creates our character. That's what shapes us. That's what teaches us. And I think, those adversities I'm now grateful for, even though maybe through struggling for them, it's obviously no one likes to struggle, but that's where we have growth. That's when we're outside our comfort zone, when we go through those experiences.
So where did you draw your strength? Because, you are always smiling and positive and helping others and thinking of ways to give more inspiration and energy back. That kind of an experience being, it's really painful to hear about that people would treat you in that way. How do you think you drew that resilience to come through that? What would you tell someone who's not living in maybe the most aware town or environment where people may still be exuding this, because we know that bullying it's still going on and people are not aware of these kind of injuries and sensitive enough?
Well, I think, surrounding yourself by a solid, trustworthy, supportive, group of people is definitely, the number one thing. And also, one thing that was missing from my family life is that I had no one to relate to. I had no one that was going through what I was going through. And I think that's why our show and being here today, telling our stories, is so important, because when we can put ourselves in a vulnerable place and to share what we've been through and be authentic, there is somebody that will connect with that. And social media these days can be such a positive for that reason, and it can be a negative, for the bullying. It's a scale that I am always teetering with, and I'm a Libra as well, about the social media, because sometimes I hate it, but other times I love it because it can be used as a great, powerful, positive tool. Like when I do put up a post about spinal cord injury awareness or advocacy, and the people that, take the time to click the link to go to my website, to read my family story, and the people that have connected with me through that way, that's where I see it. It's such a blessing, and it's such a great way that, before that technology, there's no way that we could have such a connection in that sense. So I think to go back to answering the question is just to find somebody to connect with, and then it makes you feel that support because you're not alone.
Did you have a role model or anyone that did help you from that loneliness place?
From my father's injury, or going through that, or for what part?
In general, how did you transform from being picked on and being told things that, clearly weren't true about yourself? If we look at the post Jarvis is throwing up about your modeling career, and you were just working.
Who you are as a little girl on your dad's lap.
Yeah, so clearly they couldn't see who you really are. Was it just the relationship with your dad, or was there someone else who maybe gave you a sense of hope or direction?
Well, to be honest, I struggled for a long time because my father actually was diagnosed with very invasive cancer when I was 13, and then he died very quickly, and I had not only the loss of my father, but my grandfather and my uncle, all of cancer within a 2-year period, basically around the age of 14 and 15. And I just kind of introverted and kept to myself for years. Years. I was trying to break out of it, and I wasn't, and I kind of had to hit rock bottom and really just feel the crap out of my feelings, and it was hard and it hurt and it sucked, to be honest. But once I allowed myself to feel, then I was on the road to my future and where I am today. And so I guess any advice for our listeners from me would be that my experience was to not feel, and I tried to just kind of keep going and keep it all in and not talk about it. And through my experience, I'm the completely opposite type of person now. I'm like an over-expressive, over-communicator, always sharing my story and try to be so raw and authentic with people in the moment with how I feel, because I think a lot of us lack that in a society that tries to be perfect, especially in entertainment. Everything is glazed over to be pretty or beautiful or whatever it is. But for me too, when someone can just share with me, and again, it's all about connection. I feel that the most value in my life from also becoming a minimalist and traveling a lot and not really having a home or not really having like a lot of belongings, that it just, the most value you get out of life is experience and the relationships and the people you share them with. So it just comes back to, you know, finding your support system. And for me to go through that process, I just had to let myself feel. And I think, I don't know, did that answer your question? I kind of even forget
what
where
it
I
sounds
answered
like,
your question.
yeah, it sounds like what I'm hearing is, and I'm seeing from Jarvis's photos, your act of going out there, especially some of the work you do and connecting to people. I mean, I believe that you reached out to Peter yourself. I mean, the whole way that you're connected.
Yeah, we actually met on Instagram,
Right.
and that's another thing that's
So-
such a positive of
your
social.
whole nature, it sounds like that you've reached out to connect to people as a means maybe of healing your own loneliness and connecting to people, but it's also a way of showing your compassion and your care and your complete empathy for people who have injuries to the spinal cord.
And actually, I just remembered to go back to my own question I asked both of you of that defining moment when I felt the strength that I had. You know, I was Miss Massachusetts at the time. I was volunteering at a rehabilitation hospital for a spinal cord injury advocacy event, and the doctor have heard my story and asked me if I wanted a job in spinal cord injury research. And I'm not in a medical background. I didn't have any idea what or how this position would be. And I had a very serious discussion with her, and I said, let's give it a try. And for me, to be honest, it was one of the hardest things I did, because every day I went in there and worked with people with spinal cord injuries was a reminder of like losing my father in my mind. And I would go home from work and I would cry every day, because not only that, I would have to drive past the hospital that I was with when I was in my father's arms when he passed away. And so I would drive past the hospital where I lost him to go into work. Then I would drive past his office, and then my brand new office at this rehab hospital was a view of his office, because he was a geotechnical engineer in Boston.
Wow.
And so it was just this constant, like, it was like the universe was like, you're gonna feel the crap out of this, and it's gonna suck. But like once I got through it, it was just like, this place has now become like my like haven, my home, and my inspiration. And when I went to move out of LA, like I really didn't want to lose the job, because I felt so connected and that was my purpose to be there. But something wasn't right. I needed to kind of move on. And I spoke with so many people about moving on, and they're all like, you know, we feel that your father would support that choice. And I did. I was able to actually move to LA, work the job remotely, and still support it. And I'm still connected with that hospital. So, you know, I think my advice for listeners on that aspect was, or what to do, is same thing that Peter did, is put yourself outside your comfort zone, because when you feel the most uncomfortable, that's when you experience that growth. And that was major, major growth for me. That without that pushing myself to do that job and to stay with that job and work through a little bit of that uncomfortableness, it really pushed me to sit here today and to be working on my own nonprofit that's supporting the spinal cord injury community.
Wow.
And you know, one thing that's interesting to me here, listening to you, Caitlin, is you went from someone as a young girl who thought you weren't very pretty to being Miss Massachusetts. And look at you as you sit here today. Like, what was that transition like? Was there a defining moment for you where you were like, I want to embrace who I am and my
It's crazy.
Inner beauty and my outer beauty.
There was a defining moment too, or these very vivid memories of choices that I made, that without that one choice, my life would be completely different. And one of them was entering my first pageant, and it was weird that I was even interested in it. I kind of don't know why. And it was already after I lost my father, and he would have never let me do anything like that. And my mom was kind of like, fine, after I bugged. And I remember doing it, and I was terrified. I was a train wreck. I was like shaking. I couldn't even like walk and smile at the same time. It was completely difficult. So to think of that girl, that 15-year-old girl who went to compete for like Miss it was Miss Boston, I think, to the girl who won an international title as Miss World. It was like, oh my gosh. And it took me 15 years to win that title. And I won Miss Massachusetts and Miss California and these smaller systems. And it took me forever, but I did it. And so I think, too, when we're all pursuing something, just don't put a timeline on it. Just continue having that, passion and perseverance and a higher purpose, and I think that will take you to being exactly where you're supposed to be.
Wow, that's amazing advice as well. So, Caitlin, we teased the audience earlier we have like about 5 minutes left in the entire show, maybe about 4 now, and we have 2 minutes left in your 15-minute segment. We don't want to go into the entire story because it's not the happiest story, but we did promise the audience there was a big production today.
Yes.
So we're finally paying off on that tease.
Yeah, no, well, I just came from, I've been living in a third world country, and, people always question how I felt with safety, but we were just here in Los Angeles, and I had a guy following me and in the Starbucks, out of the Starbucks, and, we had to call the police and had an escort over here to the studio, so it's always a production with Caitlin is what I say. Never a dull moment. Or that, you've talked to me on the show so many times, and I've been through, earthquakes, and then I'm here for the fires, and it's like my family just is like, well, if there's a natural disaster, that's where Caitlin's going to be. So it's just, sometimes I feel like I'm a phoenix. Like I just keep setting myself on fire. But I'm always, I've gone through like 10 lives. I must have like 20 or 30 in the bank.
And that's a good thing. So, wrapping it up with Caitlin's segment here, who are some of your inspirations in life?
Well, definitely my father is my biggest inspiration. He, could have had a spinal cord injury and said, I give up, and, that's it. But he didn't. He was a geotechnical engineer. He graduated from Cornell University, which my most prized possession is his, Cornell degree. And I think just his, him still supporting the family. Like my mom would wake me up in the morning, I'd get my little blankie, we'd go in the car, in the van, put him in the van, that's just like your van, Peter, and we'd drive into Boston, and he'd work a 40-hour work week, and my mom would work out of the house while she took care of me. And so again, my mom, both my parents just gave me the best example of love, and that unconditional love and support of each other, and that example, and their individual examples as individual people and together, and the relationship and love have been my example. And I just feel blessed to have such amazing parents that
there's Caitlin's timer.
Tried to, that really decided to kind of have I feel like a miracle baby, and that's why my purpose is so big, because they had to go above and beyond, not just like natural conception to have me. And so I almost feel like my purpose, before I was even born, was bigger than me, and I'm working on climbing over to the top of that mountain.
What a powerful thought to have about your existence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, wow, it's been great getting to know us.
Yeah.
Caitlin,
everybody else thought the same.
And we're always like, feel free, this will be, when you do a Facebook Live, the video's there for perpetuity, so if you have any questions, write it in the comments in the future. We're all open to answering more questions. And we will be live again next week on Monday, December 18th. And Caitlin will be here in the studio with us. And our guests next week, speaking of somatic experiencing.
Yes, performance artist and somatic experience practitioner Anthony Twig Wheeler will be here. And he is an empowered person who teaches his learning and takes it all over the world, including to the Congo.
Wow.
And we're ready for his inspiration and his presence to be upon us.
And so next week, Caitlin, you and I will be sharing a camera, just so you know.
Awesome.
As long as, that doesn't cramp your style or nothing.
You can never cramp my style,
I gotta share
Peter.
a camera with Peter? Come on. And, coming up in 2018, we actually are going to have, out of the gate, probably a couple of guests that you've seen before in the past year and a half. Paul Shirley's going to be coming back, talking about his new book. I believe it's called Things I Say on First Dates, or...
It's still called Stories I Tell on Dates.
There you go. I always get it wrong. We're going to have Dr. Matthew Lefferman back on the show, and we're probably going to also be checking in. Even when we have new guests, we're going to check in with the old guests to see what they're up to. We always want to hear from, it'll be interesting to hear where Jordan Watkins is now, a year removed from things. We'll probably talk to Dr. Russ up at Stanford, see what he's up to, and we'll kind of, if he's caught that elusive trout or not yet. But anyway, so we will see you here again live next week, December 18th, for our last show of 2017. And quick goodbye, Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. So great I could be live, and let's get our questions ready for us for next week.
Dr. Richard?
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Caitlin, for being here. Challenge us. Bring forth topics we want to hear. Your voice will be represented. Ask your questions. Be present with us. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.